Hello, everybody. We are back again for episode 3 of our video cast at Mental Health Muscle United with me, Aaron, the chairman, Matt, the manager, and Dan, the social sec, and Kit Man. Hope everybody is okay and managing the whole lockdown, keeping well, staying safe, and most of all, most important, staying at home. So today what we're going to do is something slightly different to the general football chit-chat. We thought it would be a good idea to delve into kind of why Mental Health Muscle United started, what brought it together, how we're all involved, and at what kind of capacity and for what reason. We're going to talk a little bit about mental health in the game, how that's affected kind of Premier League all the way down to lower leagues. And Dan and Matt are going to talk a little bit more about that in regards to local level football and grassroots. Then we'll talk a little bit about some players in the professional game that have kind of gone through some mental health struggles and the impact that football's had on their lives. And then we'll just touch upon, lastly, the importance of football in the lives of those in the community. So what it means to people and just kind of bring in a little bit of well-being on that subject. So, how is everybody? Boys, you okay?
Yeah, all good, thank you.
Yeah, good, mate. All good.
Brilliant. Good. Okay, so Mental Health Muscle United, what is it? Why did it come about? So, cut a long story short, otherwise I could be here myself for a few hours. So there was an organisation called Mental Health Muscle that I started 3 years ago, and about 18 months ago recognised the need locally to promote what I was doing at Mental Health Muscle more so, and trying to find a way to do that. And it was quite obvious, having spoke to Matt at the time, after the passing of Kyle as well, it kind of made a lot of sense to do something in the football world and bring about something that could impact the lives of those in the community, and also kind of link up with the people that knew Kyle, that have been affected by mental health, have been affected by suicide, etc. And really a way of trying to promote that as best as we can. It initially started with a fixture, Mental Health Muscle United versus King Stainton. The Rams, and Matt was the manager there at the time. Ultimately, his last game at the club as well, which was a very special day for him, I know, but you'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. And that's kind of what we did. So we did the Deacon Cup. Mental Health Muscle United came out victorious 4-2. I'm sure we'll talk about that again a little bit later. But yeah, that's how it kind of came about. So ultimately, moving forward, Mental Health Muscle United will continue to support Kyle's story, raise awareness of mental health, raise awareness of suicide prevention and what we can do as a community to get people to talk about their mental well-being. And whilst we're doing that, the games that we play, the fundraising that we do, will all be donated over to King's Care in King Stainton, which is the local charity that have set up Do It for Deeks campaign in Kyle's name, supported strongly by us as a football team, those that knew Kyle closely, and also his family. So Yo and Kiam and all of the deacons are very much behind that campaign. So I'll stop talking. I'll put over to the gaffer just to kind of give you a little bit more information about Kyle and kind of Matt's role at the club and why he's involved himself. So if I open the floor for you, mate.
Yeah, cool. Well, if I start with my role, I guess I remember sitting down with Aaron. I can't even remember when, in Winners Cafe, to first talk about this game. Thinking at the time, oh, it's a great idea. It's a great opportunity because of the strength that football has in kind of the community. When I was the manager at King Stainton for the first time, we obviously went through the struggle of losing Deeks. As on the side, I was a close friend of his, so that was a real struggle. But we had a lot of young lads who were really close friends, who've been playing for King Stainton at the time, who were obviously broken by it. We were really broken as a group, as a club, and I think the local community really got behind that and supported that. And we were having charity games in the beginning where we were getting hundreds and hundreds of people. And me and Dan organised one, and I think there was about 300-400 people down at Broad Park.
Amazing.
And so from that, there was a real vehicle there for football to make a difference. And coming back to mental health muscle, I've been aware of the organisation through the gym, and Aaron's helped myself kind of quite a lot with sessions and stuff. I suffer quite badly with depression anyway, on medication for it. Have done for a number of years, as a lot of people know. But I also feel passionately and strongly about helping people, and there was no harder task than picking up that group of players at King Stainton and trying to move forward. And in the end, we were quite successful, and we were quite successful in doing it. And I take great pride in that. So the natural progression was to get involved with Mental Health Muscle United, using my kind of experience now as a manager and taking on that role as manager of the team. Like I said, going back to Deeks was a really close friend of mine. I've known him since he was, quite young, mainly through football, but then obviously as a real close friend. A lot of people used to call us father and son, I think, because we were quite similar in that we were both pretty stupid when we were pissed up. We used to fight all the time and stuff. But just a real sad situation. It was the second suicide that I've kind of, suffer suicide, do you? Because I won't be here.
Bereaved.
So he's the second of my close friends that I've lost. So getting involved in this sort of project and moving forward with it is massively important to me, both, really deep personally. So it's been a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to taking it forward.
Cheers, Matt. Thank you for that, buddy. And Dan, what was your friendship like with Kyle? What was he like as a person?
So first really got to know him at secondary school, teen school. We both went to teen school. Basically, we're in the same friendship group. We both had a passion for football, which is basically why we essentially ended up being as close as we did. Both played for the school football team. Kind of grew up going to house parties and going to youth club and playing football there together. And both played for Newton 66 youth team up until the age of 16. And also both enjoyed, quite a few of us, going to watch Torquay United when we were sort of like 14, 15, 16. And then after school, I think he kind of drifted a little bit from football and he got into kind of like BMXing and stuff. But then I think I saw him one night in, I think it was Rafters, and he basically was like, I want to get back playing football again. And then I think he ended up coming back to, did he come to 66, Matty? Or did he go to, I think he did.
When I was playing there, I can't remember how old I was, but he came along with a chap at the time. He's like even 6, I think he was 15 at the time when he came along. Yeah. He wasn't old enough, but he had so much ability that we really wanted him to play. He really wanted to play, but he just couldn't because he wasn't old enough. Yeah. But they were my first memories of him, really.
And then, he joined Newton 66, and then, God, he must have played for like 5 or 6 different clubs. He went to Team Village and all sorts. He wanted to play pretty much every game he could. He wanted to sign for every club so he could play.
A bit of a nomad, was he? A bit of a nomad.
He didn't really care who he played for as long as he was kind of kicking a ball around. And then got even closer with him. And then when we both ended up I think he went to Team Village after 66, and then I went to Spurs with Matt. And then Matt went over to King State, and Kyle was already there. And then both ended up playing at King State, and those are probably the best footballing years I've had. So that's mine. And
he got me to King State, to be fair. Deeks was on to me all the time. He was going there. My first signing wherever I go is always down. So we kind of.
So he Matt and Deeks basically both roped me into signing for Kings, and and that was that. Scored on my debut. I think Deeks set me up, I think.
Yeah, he did. He did.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. And then kind of why Mental Health Muscle United for you, Dan? Put Kyle aside. Why what we're doing is important to you?
I think Matt's already summed it up pretty well there. But obviously mental health is growing and growing and growing, and more people are struggling. And it's good that more people are coming out and talking about it, but that means more people need help and support. And obviously we've got a great platform to not just raise funds, but raise awareness for not just King's Care, but mental health in the local area. And we want to try and support as many people as we physically can. And hopefully this podcast will help people who are struggling, and maybe give them a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for both sharing that. And just on that kind of raising awareness in the local community, not just within football, we were all very delighted to know that last month we got nominated as a finalist in the Team Valley Team Bridge District Council Community and Sports Awards. So Mental Health Muscle United are one of the 3 finalist teams, and they're one of the 3 finalist community groups to be recommended. So that's exciting for us when we get this coronavirus out the way and that event happens. Myself, Matt and Dan, amongst a few of the other players, will be down there for that awards evening. So that's exciting. So definitely what we're doing is, I think, catching the attention of a lot of people, and it's very relative and it's very hitting home for a lot of people, particularly with the support that we've had through supporting Do It for Deeks and Kyle's story. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, boys. I appreciate your honesty. So I wanted to touch upon just very quickly mental health and football and what it looks like in kind of today's professional game. We've seen a lot of attention through campaigning. So the Heads Up campaign, what's his name, Prince William, doing a lot of work around football as a key member on the board at the FA. He's very much a playing part in what happens in regards to well-being and mental health within football, and he's pushed that massively. We've seen that at the top of the game. How is that at the lower leagues, more grassroots level, guys? Like from your jobs at Devon FA, how is mental health being implemented into football at the lower leagues?
I think for in the lower level, the sort of amateur level, the sort of South Devon League, I think football is almost like to take your mind off your mental health almost. It's almost you go to training one night a week and then you go and play on a Saturday, and that's kind of the things you look forward to. Yeah. It's kind of almost an antidepressant to take your mind off it and think, oh well, I can focus on going to training. And to be fair, it does really, really take you, for that hour or so you're at training and the 2 or 3 hours you're at football on a Saturday, it does really take your mind off your worries and your troubles. Like I said, after Kyle passed for me, everyone was in the same boat. Everyone struggled, and for me, playing football and just having that, even just training, just to look forward to going to that, and then being around your mates and friends and teammates on a match day. I think football is a really good platform at local level for people to take their mind off their own mental health and any troubles and worries they do have.
Yeah, I can't really add much more to that, to be fair. Spot on, really. Like Dan said, and I've always tried to, as a coach, as a manager of local teams, I've always tried to, enforce that kind of, Saturday and Tuesday nights. They're an escape from your day to day. We'll make it as comfortable and as friendly as an environment as we can, but also in the other hours of the week. And it does put a strain on myself mentally, but that just to let them know consistently that I'm always at the end of the phone, or just drop me a message. And I think that approach has worked for me, and it's I think I feel quite confident that I've helped quite a lot of players.
Yeah.
In doing so, but like I said, I touched on before, obviously with my own problems and stuff, it is massively important to me as a person to pass that knowledge on, and speaking openly about it with them. I think as a group at King Stainton, we were so open and honest with each other that we created a real kind of brotherhood, something really special where people weren't afraid to voice. We might be, I don't know, we might be a one-off club in that we were so open with each other, but I like to think that that's the way it's all going anyway.
Yeah.
And it was really something special to be a part of. And
yeah, it was.
Especially being so close to such a tragic event, to be able to create that, I think says a lot about the players involved.
Yeah.
Special.
Yeah. And I think so. I think what you're saying about that kind of community, that brotherhood, that very special feeling, I feel like that's a huge part of what we're doing at Mental Health Muscle United. A lot of the players that we've got, either new Deeks, either have their own mental health issues themselves and have understood and get it and appreciate the difficulties that people go through. And I think that's a really powerful thing. and I keep banging on about it, and I know the boys sometimes think to themselves, "Fucking hell, Aaron, shut up, chair. I'm sick of you hearing about it." But actually, it's such an important thing, and it's such an important value that as a club, because we are particularly special and we're quite unique, that we have to keep that focus as a core value of what we do, and everything that we do has to orientate around why we're doing this. You know, we're not just a football club that's set up to play football. There's so much more about what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve in that underlying foundation of the football club. So yeah, I totally agree with you, mate. I think that's a powerful thing.
I know it sounds quite cliche, but with the setup that we've got, the football really is secondary, and it really is just a vehicle, really, for us to impact on more young chaps' lives, really, and women as well. Of course, it is. I've always fancied getting myself into women's football at some stage, and I think that's somewhere we need to go as well, really.
Yeah, women's, totally agree with you on the women's side, mate. Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's something that as a step forward, we could definitely look to implement some sort of females aspect to our club or what we do, particularly when the Astro's done at Devon FA. I know that's going to be pushed back now, but when that's all done, we can certainly sit down and look at what we can do for the female game. Obviously, for me, coming from my earlier days working in football, women's football is where I was at. You know, I had the privilege of working with half a dozen now England stars, Lucy Stanforth, etc. You know, all those girls that now play at top level football in the ladies' game. I worked with when I was much younger, and the ladies' game I think is an area which is really developing, and they're really keen on mental health, and they're really keen on bringing that well-being aspect into the ladies' game. So yeah, definitely an area we could look at, mate.
Cool.
Dan, how does the let me phrase this properly. How does the policy around mental health charters, well-being, have an impact on the players and the parents and the coaches at grassroots level?
I think, working for Devon FA, it's something that we're obviously the Heads Up campaign's been launched, and we've been pushing that as much as possible and trying to direct people to that. But I think as a organisation, we're looking at putting something in place which is a little bit more personal to our clubs and coaches and players and anyone involved in football, really. I think the Heads Up one is good. I think that's really good for if you're going to watch a professional game or whatever. But I think there needs to be, and like I said, we are working on getting policies and charters in place for the local level and trying to get as many people, clubs, coaches, players, everyone involved, even down to the tea lady, involved in mental health education and trying to, spot the signs of someone who they might think is struggling.
Yeah, love that. And we've got plans in place with Mental Health Muscle as well, haven't we, to try and look at that. It's the spectator, it's the officials, it's that whole package. If you're going to hit something hard and make sure that you make an impact, it needs to be the whole encompassing family that surrounds within that sport. And the more people you can educate and raise awareness with, the further that message can spread. So yeah, that's really important. So professional footballers, I know that a few have come out in the last few years, more evidently, I think. We've got players like Danny Rose, we've got players like Ashley Westwood, Tyrone Mings. They've really come out and talked about their mental health. What impact does that have on the professional game when your pros who are well and truly at the top of their game come out and talk about stuff, Matt?
I think it's massive. I think, like, as a microcosm for the whole of society, I think it needs more people opening up and talking publicly about their own experiences, because then I know through my experiences, as I said earlier, I know that people really buy into you being open with them. So people like Danny Rose coming out and saying it will enable other footballers and local level footballers and people just to think if he's struggling, it must be okay for me. It's okay for me to struggle, because I think when people talk about their own experience, it flicks on and off light bulb switches that you might not even think you have a problem, well, you might think, oh, there's something not quite right, but someone actually talking about it and expressing it might flick light switches on in your head to think, oh, that's what it is, or that's, you know. And people look up to footballers. There's no two way. There's no getting around it. You know, they get a hard time, but people do look up to footballers. They idolise them. I always did growing up and stuff. So if players had come out, say 10, 15 years ago when I was growing up, saying these sorts of things, it might have made my understanding earlier a bit stronger. So I think, definitely there's a value in these players coming out and speaking openly, like they do about racism, like they do about other things. In order to take it forward, and I was going to touch on it with at county level with us, obviously me and Dan working for the Devon FA, we just need more and more people talking about their feelings in a public arena if they're comfortable to, and it will help the whole of the game, or the whole of society. I'm a real believer in that.
Yeah, you've spoken about 10, 15 years ago, you know, when you and I were playing football at that kind of local teenage, young adult level, you know, players then didn't really talk about it, did they? And it's only now that they're coming out and talking about it. So Paul Merson, for example, Gascoigne, David Batty, Di Matteo, they're all those players that Matt and I were very familiar with at that time, only come out and speak about it now when the present footballers of today have already spoken about it.
I think that's I think footballers do get a lot of bad press, and they do get a lot of hard times. But I think sort of like 10, 15 years ago, it wasn't socially acceptable for them to be depressed or for them to have mental health issues, because you'd look at, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years ago, you look at maybe someone like Steven Gerrard or Frank Lampard on 50 grand or 100 grand a week. Yeah. I think they weren't allowed to be depressed. They weren't allowed to have mental health issues because they had all that money. I think the public perception was, oh, well, they've got so much money. You can't
what have they got to be depressed about?
Exactly. Literally exactly that. So I think. Go on.
Sorry, mate. I also think that, like, it wasn't just talk. No, it's only been like the last 5 years, if that, where anybody's talked about it. It's not just a football problem. It was a society of the time.
It's how, absolutely, mate. It's how we've changed. You know, society has changed massively. Perceptions has changed massively. The stigma has not. Stigma's still there. You know, in a lot of cases it's worse, but the stigma has changed as well. And so you're right, Matt. It's the impact that society has had on football is what's changed it. But actually, it wasn't. Football's not the thing here. It's mental health in society as a whole.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I think that's probably related to a couple of things. That's probably related to, first of all, the rate of suicides going up, which is obviously very sad. But secondly, the bravery of people like Clark Carlisle, for example, coming out and talking about their like near misses with suicide, and you have people like Stan Collymore coming out. I know he's had a lot of bad press back along, but him coming out and saying how he struggled with sort of like after he finished his career, because it is hard for him, you know. It's like having a job for 20 years and then being told you can't work anymore, or getting an injury to prevent yourself working, and then it's almost like, well, all right, they have got a lot of money, but mentally, what is your next step? And then you've got to give credit to people like Danny Rose and Aaron Lennon, and even at a lower level like Billy Key, who used to play for Torquay United, coming out and expressing their views and their struggles, and they're like almost the groundbreakers who've come out and said, look, mental health does exist in the professional game in the current day. I think massive credit has got to go to them for showing bravery, and I think maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, if people came out and said that, they'd probably be worried that, you know, someone like Danny Rose playing for Newcastle now, if they went and played, I don't know, away at, say, Sunderland, we're still in the Prem, and massive derby game, they'd probably take a lot of shit off the Sunderland fans they'd be like, they'd probably, you know, give them a lot of shit for being depressed or having poor mental health. So I think it's really, they've really set an example and set precedent. So fair play to all of those players that are coming out and talking about it.
with Danny Rose, wasn't there talk about Tottenham or one of his clubs wanting rid of him because of his depression and because of his mental health issues? There was talk about him not being able to do things in the club and being isolated by the club. And was that correct with Danny Rose? Was that Danny Rose?
I'm not sure on that one. I'm not 100% what his. I know he spoke about depression, but I'm not sure because obviously there's going to be a lot of different triggers for it, isn't there?
Yeah.
I don't know whether Matt knows anything.
Yeah, I've never heard that before. I know that he's been quite vocal in other senses as well about pay and pay structure and stuff at Tottenham. But
was it about something different?
Yeah, I don't think it was anything related to the mental health side. Okay. I don't know. Perhaps I don't know, but you know. It's,
so maybe the question I want to throw out there is, do we think, looking at it on the other side of the scale, yes, there's so much great work going on. Yes, players are coming out and talking about it. You know, as someone that works in mental health, you know, I think it's important that we recognize the shit that isn't happening as well. And so my question to you is, do you think that still exists where management, boards, directors are frown upon mental health, and that if players do come out, maybe there's another 10, 20, 30 professional players that want to come out and talk about it, but don't because the powers of above aren't seeing it as something that they want to hear. Do you know what I mean? Does that exist?
Yeah, possibly. I think I'm not going to say it does, but my assumption would be it probably does, because I think you probably have the kind of old school, if you've got chairman and, you know, directors on the board and people like that who are a little bit old school, maybe late 60s, 70s, who have never been aware of mental health or anything like that. They were kind of just told to get on with it almost. I think you may get certain individuals who may frown upon it. And, you know, if Danny Rose came out and had a chat with the manager and said that my mental health isn't in a great state. I think Aaron Lennon did this when he was I think it might have been Burnley. He didn't play for sort of 6 months or so because of his mental state. But obviously Sean Dyche and whoever else at Burnley will obviously really understand about that. But at another club, you may get a circumstance in a situation where they turn around and say, well, we ain't paying you 50 or 60 grand a week to, you know, go into rehab or whatever. Yeah. So, I think that probably does exist, and that's a real shame.
I think there might be more so still that stigma within the player himself that thinks I can't talk about it because there might be. Yeah. I personally don't think there would be clubs that would frown upon it, but I think that the player might think there is, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So he might think, I might not get a new contract or something if I talk about this, or you know what I mean?
Yeah. So we're talking Premier League right now, English football. What happens across the world? Are different leagues showing different reactions and responses to mental health awareness? I'm just going to go out on a whim here, but Serie A, you know, the racism in the Serie A is terrible. It's rife. You don't see many players in Italy or that league coming out and talking about their mental health, their religion, or, you know, it seems a very communist kind of league that we don't talk about all of that stuff. You know, do you think that is a reflection of players not having those difficulties, or maybe, like Matt says, not wanting to talk about it because they know it might get the attention that they don't want?
I think, if anything, players in that league probably struggle more from it, arguably, than in this country. If you've got discrimination and racism and you've got fans saying all sorts and throwing bananas on the pitch and whatever, I think that's going to hit players harder. Than you don't see that in this country. I know we have the odd racism case, but we don't have nothing on the scale you see in Serie A. You see it's almost like a fortnightly occurrence. You see it. I think was it Matuidi it happened to? Is that the Moise Keane, who is now at Everton? That happened to him when he was at Juve. It happens a lot. And to be honest, the Italian FA and the Serie A chiefs don't really seem to do too much about it. I think if that happened in this country, you'd have stadium bans and all sorts. So I think the FA and the Premier League actually do deserve quite a bit of credit there, because there's been cases in this country, individual cases in this country recently, where they've actually been dealt with really well, and whoever the offenders have been dealt a stadium ban, and then the police have followed it up. Whereas I haven't seen that really happen in Italy. So
No.
I think the Premier League and the FA and the clubs all deserve the credit for taking
I agree.
the appropriate action.
I think it goes back again as well though, to what I was saying about leaders and stuff and talking quite openly. Like we said, I've never seen like a spokesperson for the Italian leagues coming out and saying that this is disgraceful, it needs to stop.
No.
So therefore, players aren't going to talk about it, are they? Because there's just there's no platform to do so. Like we said, in this country, when England play abroad and they get racially abused and it happens regularly, it's disgusting. It shocks me that it still happens so regularly. But you have Gareth Southgate coming out, you have the FA coming out and saying it's unacceptable, blah blah blah.
Yep.
And then players then feel that they have that backing from above, that they can go and express themselves. So I guess it works with mental health. But like you said, Aaron, I haven't thought about it. With all the racial abuse that happens in Italian games, it's interesting that no players have ever come out and spoke about mental health. Yeah, maybe we don't live surely. Maybe in Italy they do. I don't know, because obviously we don't see it every day. Maybe they do in their press, but I've never seen anything.
I've never
seen anything abroad, actually.
I think you'd be reluctant to, wouldn't you? If you got racially abused or discriminated against for any of your features, I think you'd be reluctant to come out and talk about it, because it's another thing that people can hammer you for almost. So I know personally, if there was no, and they're not getting punished. You've seen, I think there was a Champions League game or a Europa League game where there was an Italian team in their fans racially abused another team, and then I think there was another case where another team entered the second half a minute late or something. They took 16 minutes at halftime instead of 15 minutes, and the fine for the team for not returning to the pitch on time was more than the fine for racial abuse.
Yeah, mad.
So if there's no implications there for, so that's something that massively needs to be worked on, I think, in the professional game. In this country, I think we don't see it as much, which is really good. But when we do see it, it's very small individual cases, and they're dealt with appropriately. But when you've got like 5,000 fans chanting, there was an England game, wasn't there, last year where, I forget who it was.
Was it Bulgaria?
Yeah, it might have been Bulgaria, yeah. And they stopped the game several times, didn't they? And one of the Bulgaria players went over to the fans and just said, basically, stop it, because if you don't stop, and to be fair, England did the right thing, didn't let it affect them.
That was with Tyrone. That was with Tyrone Mings, wasn't it? Tyrone Mings.
And I'm sure that in the aftermath of that game, the chief of the Bulgarian FA came out and said he didn't hear anything.
Yeah, that was it. It's just,
and then he resigned. Yeah.
And then the manager left.
They all had to leave because it was so ridiculous, because you could hear it on TV.
Yeah, and they also got hammered 7-0, I think it was. So
litter.
And
Litter.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy how how the difference in cultures, because that's a big part of Bulgaria compared to here, is the cultural difference. Bulgaria still live in a very male dominant society. A lot of and that comes with the stigma that surrounds being a man, being a strong person. Can't show your weaknesses. You can't racism. Oh, just man up. Mental health. Oh, man up. All that kind of approach and attitude to life is a massive thing over there. And we've still got a lot of work to do globally to make sure that we're all kind of singing off the same hymn sheet. But I just want to go back to what you're saying about players who are affected by racism, all sorts of being homeless before they were professional footballers, tough upbringings, all that sort of stuff. Excuse me. That's all got to surely be affecting someone's mental well-being. And those life experiences has got to have an impact on their mental health. So there are probably, I don't know, maybe another 50, 60 players in the Premier League, particularly, or Championship and the lower leagues who probably have their mental health affected by their background.
Yeah, and I've got to say as well, taking all that into account is one thing, but the even more so the intense pressure and scrutiny that they're under, A from the press, but B to get results in a results-driven business where the difference between winning and losing is millions of pounds. How can you not feel that stress and that pressure?
Yeah,
exactly. I feel when I'm managing King Stainton or whoever, I feel stress and pressure to deliver a win. and we're playing in front of like five men and his dog. Like,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
But because I'm so passionate about, I think that the game treads a really fine line in all the fantastic things that it does. But I almost think if you really love the game, it's going to affect your mental health.
Yeah.
That might not make sense, but when Dan's watching Liverpool or something, they don't. But if they lost, you feel down about it. Don't you? Do you know what I mean? So it's controllable. Maybe sometimes it's controllable, sometimes it's not. But that competitiveness in life, in general, in my opinion, is the main cause of mental health issues. And there's nowhere more competitive than football. When you're playing at the highest level, yes, you're a proper athlete, and yes, you're dedicated, and you're getting paid.
But there's a lot of commitment and responsibility that comes with that.
You can't. It's not a normal life,
no,
in my opinion. And I think that that's why you'll never get rid of the problem. That's why there'll never not be mental health problems, especially in football, because it's a competitive environment.
There's so many factors as well in there. Like, for example, injury. If you get injured for 6 months and your contract's running out at a big club, and you haven't had the chance to prove yourself to show that you could go somewhere else, you're going to be over in your head. You're thinking, well, I'm not fit, I'm injured. And then whilst you're injured, what are you doing while you're injured? You're sat around watching TV all day. You're probably getting bored. You're doing your rehab stuff, and then you got a lot of players that suffer with alcohol, drugs, even gambling as well.
Gambling, yeah.
I think having that much money is quite dangerous, isn't it?
Definitely.
The things they can do with it.
Yeah.
And
so there's so many different pressures.
And I think as well, like you get into football in the beginning because you love it, like, and you enjoy it. So these professional players at the top level, people beat them to death about, he's just there for the money and stuff. But deep down, really, they want to play. They just want to play football. That's why they're involved in football.
Of course they do.
And so to take that away from someone is one thing, but also they want to be involved in football because they love the idea of winning and competing and stuff. When they're not able to do that, it's going to have a detriment on their mental health. Anyway, when they are able to do it and they aren't successful or they don't win, it's going to. So it's a really difficult kind of like environment to be in. It really is at all levels, and that's the crux of the game, and that's what the game's built upon, is that competitiveness, and that is going to cause problems all over. It's just creating an environment where people can just talk about that.
Yeah.
I think as well, I don't know if there is anything in place already, but for players who are coming through the academy at sort of like 15, 16, even 17 or 18 year olds, because they don't all make it. There's only so many players who make it. And you can imagine if you've been at a club from the age of 7 or 8, or even younger than that now, because clubs are signing players who are like sort of 4 or 5 years old. If you've been at a club for 8 or 9 years to then not get a professional contract and say you've just been released, you imagine how, and you've got nothing to fall back on. You imagine how heartbreaking that would be for a younger player to take on board. Something definitely needs to be in place there for those youngsters who are.
Funny you should say that.
Trigger all sorts. Yeah,
it's funny you should say that. So JP and myself, for the last 6 months, have been writing up some workshops for academy players about mental resilience and the mental transition from being an academy player and not making the cut, and what happens after life and after football, and where do you go, and all the mental struggles and the kind of well-being that is affected by that transition and not making the grade. Kind of trying to see it more as a learning development as opposed to a failure, because there is always something that you can do. And so it's funny you should say that. For sure, it's a huge gap in the game for me, academy all the way through. When players have to stop playing football for one reason or another, what happens then? Like what mental frameworks are affected, and what things change within someone's mental outlook? Things change massively, and people need support with that.
I think as well, the trouble you have with that is a lot of, obviously not all parents, but you see it in kids football where the parent will push their players so much to believe that they are good enough. And you've got to have belief and you've got to have self-belief, obviously, to make it. But when they almost tell them that they are going to make it and there's no other option, then when they don't make it, which obviously happens, probably 85% of players won't make it out of an academy to a professional club. Then the players obviously got that in their mind that, well, this is the be-all and end-all. And then they almost have nothing to fall back on.
Yeah, and that can be damaging, hugely damaging for a young person's mental health.
Exactly.
You know, when they've been told that failure will never exist because you're going to make it, you're going to get there, and actually a lot of the time it's for the ego of the parent, not for the child.
Yeah.
You know, and the parents are pushing it because they want to shout about their son, their daughter making it to the top. They're the best player at the club. They're the top goal scorer. They're, you know, the golden boot of the year, whatever they, you know, all that stuff. When really the kid just wants to play football.
Yeah, and it's often the parents that are like that are often the parents who did never make it and, you know, almost want to kind of live the child's life and take the fame for them. So it is a little bit sad, but I think that's something you're always going to see. It's just a case of trying to, like you said, educate the younger lads on you know, it isn't the be all and end all. If you don't make it, there are other things you can fall back on.
Yeah, that's it.
Good. It all comes back, doesn't it, to the, like I said, though, the foundations of sport and stuff about being competitive. It's also competitive, and I think that. Yeah, like you said, the education and stuff. I mean, in terms of going back to the top of the game, I always question in these sorts of scenarios what like the PFA do, what the PFA actually do.
Yeah.
They got you know, I think is it Gordon Taylor who runs?
Yeah.
I'm not a fan. I don't rate him at all.
No, neither am I.
And you just think what are they doing this? But then are they educated? Are they educated properly?
That's it, mate. That's it.
I don't think
what I mean? So it's all levels. It's all levels all across.
Exactly what I touched upon earlier. It's got to be the whole package. It's got to be top management all the way through to the people that clean the toilets. It really has, because that's your package. That's your organization. That's your family tree. Like everyone in that family needs to be educated at the same level to then build that understanding and that resilience in order to be able to move forward together.
And also, you know? it's not just the players that need like support. It is the volunteers and the staff, and they'll be struggling as well.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And football's the one thing that brings everybody together.
Yeah,
so it's the one thing that needs to help.
Yeah, I think sadly, even before this, I was reading yesterday that a record number of footballers have been seeking mental health advice, and that's obviously only going to get even more now because of the whole coronavirus case, or pandemic, sorry. And I think even Ilkay Gundogan, who plays for Man City, he came out and said last week, not that he was struggling, but he said, I'm struggling to motivate myself from home because, you know, I'm so used to going into the training ground and stuff, and now you go from seeing your teammates and they're almost like a family, seeing them every day, to being stuck at home. You're with your family, but you're not able to. They're not going to be feeling in peak physical condition, are they? Training from home. You can't get on the pitch. You can't kick a ball. So I think unfortunately in this time and probably until the end of this year, I think things are gonna. Players are really going to need that support in place for them. Then, like Matt said, PFA. I don't know what their policy or what their scheme is on offering players advice, but I'd probably guess that they lean on an external organisation or company for that kind of thing, which probably the PFA. For the PFA, they probably should, like we said before, they should know a little bit better than that, and they should have maybe people in house who can not deal with everything, but maybe give advice and.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. So good discussion, boys. I think what we'll do is to finish off for the last 10 minutes or so, we'll talk about what football means to people. Now, I suppose that's different for everybody, but I think football is a religion, isn't it? It's a way of life for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, it means everything to me. And I think it means everything to Dan as well. And I think that it's, like I said, I think some people are I think you're born with it, kind of thing. With a real kind of obsession to it. It's dangerous, like I said. Football really does tread a fine line between being brilliant for you and the highs are great.
Yeah.
But again, it's a kind of it's almost a symbol of mental health in that it can be great and it can be terrible. There's no real there's no real like middle ground with football, I think, which is why we love it so much.
Yeah.
It gives you those intense highs, and the lows just make you want the highs. And it's huge. We've touched on it before in previous weeks, but it's huge for society, football, which again is dangerous.
How
you look at it, isn't it?
I think times like now when we obviously not watching or playing or anything like that, we can obviously still talk about it, which is good. But I think it's important. It makes us realise that there are things more important than football, but there aren't too many things. Obviously, health is more important. Family and friends are more important, but football is right up there with, well, for me, working in it and talking about it constantly and watching it constantly is, now makes me appreciate it more than ever. And I hope that when we do get it back, eventually when it is safe to do so, I hope that people do realise not just watching the professional game on TV, but actually just being able to go out and play with your mates on a Saturday or whatever. I think people will hopefully it will get people who maybe didn't play before and have had a few years out. Hopefully it will maybe get them back into it and think, well, I'm going to play it while I can. But yeah, for me, it's a massive part of my life, working in it and in my spare time watching it and talking about it. I think, I don't know about you two, but a lot of the better moments in my life have been football. So sort of like if I think about like Liverpool winning the Champions League last year, that's up there with one of the probably the best moments of my life. The feeling you get when your team wins a trophy or whatever, but then equally when the year before when we lost to Real Madrid and Karius had that stinker, that you don't really get much lower than that. So it's a roller coaster, but the rush and the feeling you get when it's going good is just nothing.
And
nothing really compares to that.
I don't know about you, Dan, but I mean, obviously, the support of your clubs is one thing, but nothing quite beats being in a dressing room, being part of a group of lads, all with the same kind of, all similar lads, all getting on. There's that camaraderie and stuff and banter.
Yeah.
There's nothing. I mean, again, it's a dangerous environment for mental health, but that feeling of safety and security, there's nothing that quite replicates that for me.
Yeah.
And
I agree with you, Matt.
Do you know
It's
what
like
I mean?
brotherhood,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah.
I think that when I was at King Stainton before, going back again, but I step in it. I was in a really terrible place after Deeks, and a lot of people know I had a number of different issues. My drinking was going crazy, and all sorts of suicidal thoughts and everything. But when I met up with the lads and when I stepped into the change room, I just felt safe and secure.
It makes you forget about it, doesn't it? A little bit.
Yeah,
not
it really
completely,
does.
but it just takes your mind off things.
And it's not just like throwing yourself completely into it. Like you're thinking, all I'm thinking about is the game. It's not that really so much. It's being surrounded by people that you just trust and love. And I feel really strongly about
it's a belonging, mate.
I feel really strongly about the benefits of being involved in football as well.
Yeah.
Not just the having something passionate.
Totally agree, mate. And like for me, there's a huge aspect of belonging in football, and for everyone to keep a positive mental health and a positive well-being, belonging is a massive aspect of that. Yeah. And for me, football, rugby, whatever sport really you play, but we'll use football in this instance, it creates that belonging that is so vital to us staying well and feeling safe and feeling secure and feeling worthful and feeling like you've got something to give in the world. And that happens, it was like when we did that first game, the Deacon Cup last year, and I stepped into that changing room as the manager at the time because we didn't have you on board then, Matt. But I stepped into that changing room and I didn't really know any of the boys as well as you both did. But I almost felt like I'd known all of them for 25 years. And it was a really empowering kind of environment. And honest to God, I felt so on top of the world and so attached to every one of them in some way. And I can imagine that happening every weekend with a team that you've created, you're managing, you go out with socially. I can imagine that the feeling that gives is incredible. I've only really experienced it with the rugby side of things, but my God, my rugby players that I've shared over the years with, they weren't just people; they were my brothers. They were, they were my family. They were my team, and nothing ever got in the way of that, and that's powerful.
I think as well, like going away from kind of local football to talk about it on a wider scale as in a country as a whole. I think one of the only times we actually do come together as a country is when England are doing well at a World Cup.
Yeah.
So you look at like 2 years ago when we did so well and we got to the semi-finals, and that did bring everyone together, and everyone was all as one. The whole country were loving it. All the players and all the Southgate was getting all the good press, and even when we did get knocked out, everyone did see that as a success, and that did for that month did bring everyone together. And that month probably goes down for me as one of the best of my life, just because of how close everyone was. Everyone was all on the same team, all cheering for the same goal. And I think it's a shame because our country really only come together in times of despair and in times of disaster, like now.
Yeah.
Or if a disaster like when the Manchester terrorist attack happened, that's really the only times we come together. So I think that and football is and like you said as well, like rugby and cricket. Sadly, that is the only time we seem to come together as a country.
I don't know about you. Go on, mate. Sorry.
I was going to say, isn't it interesting? But when we look at things at a local level, i.e., not national, not international, but all these different players that play for different clubs, whereas you would perhaps have rivalries between these players, between these clubs, but when they all come together in an international format, that kind of just disappears, doesn't it? And that united front occurs. A big example of this is Rangers and Celtic in Scotland. Half of the Scottish team play for Celtic, half of the Scottish team play for Rangers. They are sectarianism enemies. They despise each other, those two clubs, in ways I've never seen or witnessed before in my life. But when they come together as a national side, as Scotland, it's completely forgotten about because everyone's Scottish. Yeah. So that's powerful. That is. I've always recognised why that is the way it is. But it's the same with England. When we get together for England, like you say, it doesn't matter what club you play for. You're English and you're playing for England, so I'll support you. It's weird, isn't it? That.
Yeah.
I think I read somewhere the other day, that, and we were talking about Gerrard and Lampard, that era kind of thing. I think it was Rio Ferdinand was saying that they really struggled, actually, that group of players, because that their rivalries were so intense.
Yeah.
Like United and Chelsea, United and Arsenal, they were so intense that they really struggled to bond as a group when they got back together, which is quite strange.
Interesting.
Yeah. Interesting. I think Gerrard came out and said that he didn't particularly. I think he got on with Rooney because of the whole both from Liverpool kind of thing. But in terms of like Man United players in the England dressing room, I think he openly said that Gerrard and Carragher didn't really speak to Ferdinand and Neville, and that they played on the pitch together, but in the changing room or in the canteen or in training or whatever, they kind of just kept themselves to themselves because of they could. I think because their club rivalry, like Matt said, was so fierce, they couldn't let that go, which is like we were saying last week or the week before, which is probably why they never really clicked for England, which is sad, really.
So there is exactly a prime example of something that we haven't really discussed, and the rivalry issues that impact the mental well-being of players in a dressing room. The fact that they were all thinking so strongly about which clubs they played for and the effects that had on their mental framework coming together as an English team, as an international side, that must have been really difficult to play under.
Yeah.
Not really feeling like there was a trust or a bond or a brotherhood with another player.
And also,
weird.
On top of that England team were under so much pressure from the press.
Golden generation.
It was around the time, wasn't it, when the press in this country kind of went mad for scandal and
phone hacking and all that.
They were all over it. So you just think with that as well, like they were in a no-win situation. You could have all the money in the world, but
I think we didn't have as much as I liked Sven and Capello, we didn't have a manager who understood the rivalries. I think if we had an English manager, sort of like maybe even a Southgate or someone like that, or a Stuart Pearce who had played in that era and knew the rivalries and passion that those kind of like the Gerrards, the Ferdinands, the Lampards and Terrys all had. I think maybe he could have sat them down and said, look, you're not with your fucking club anymore. You're with your country. And whilst you play with your country's badge on your chest, you play as a team. You don't play as, you're not a Liverpool player now. You're not a Man United player now. But like I said, I don't think Sven and Capello almost had that mindset. They would just 4-4-2, chuck them on the pitch, and hopefully they'll work.
Because they're good players, they'll play well together, and that's not the case as we've seen, is it, over the years? So it's interesting, really interesting. So just to finish off, next few minutes, just a few bits of information really for moving forward, I suppose. So over the next coming weeks, months, myself and the Matt, Dan, JP, and the skipper Ryan will hopefully sit down and make some plans moving forward in regards to how we see Mental Health Muscle United getting back on the field. Obviously, coronavirus has had a huge impact on our plans. Last year for us was very much a learning year. We've got the boys together and the right players on board. We've now got an incredible man at the top who can lead this team forward in Matt, who understands what we're doing, why we're doing, and we've got Dan and JP and Ryan all very supportive of the movement that we're doing. So it will be a case of just sitting down and planning out the games that we can play and where we can raise as much money as possible and kind of spread the word, really. We had hoped to get heavily involved in the pre-season this year. So whenever that pre-season starts will be probably a time where Mental Health Muscle start to get back on the field as well, because every team locally, hopefully, will want a pre-season game, and we can be that team that they play. So if we can have half a dozen games like that in pre-season, that'll be great for us. I just want to say a big thanks actually to the boys that we've got on board and the boys that have stuck and stayed committed to the club, because we've only played a game and that's it. And a year on, the boys are still very much dedicated and committed to what we're doing. They understand the message. And I suppose for us, it's just about getting those pieces together and making that jigsaw puzzle complete. And we're just about there now. So we're very excited to get back on the field and do what we're here to do. And support, do it for Deeks as often and as best as we can. As the chairman, I'm very proud of what we've built. It's been a long process, but as soon as we get back on that field, I'd like to start showing people what we're all about. And getting people down to support what we're doing and to raise as much money as possible. So anything to say, Matt, while we just finish off, mate?
No, just like I said, we're very excited about the future, as Aaron just said. And like I said again, the football still is secondary, in that whilst we haven't been playing games, we've got a group chat, we've got things, we've got Instagram pages, Facebook pages. We're doing this, we're doing stuff. We're still well in there with the journey. Yeah. And regardless of having only played one game, there's still, we're still making a good positive impact, which is the only thing we're supposed to do, really.
Yeah, that's it, mate. Dan?
I think you've both taken all the words out of my mouth, but even if anyone's watching and they're involved with a local side or whatever, and they think, oh, that would be, quite nice for us to have a game at our ground, and whenever that is, later in the year or whenever we can get back playing, just drop us a message and we can hopefully get something sorted out, because we don't want to just be based in, we want to be based all around the county, really. We don't want to just be based in one place. We want to spread the word, spread the message, and try and help people all across the county.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so so something a little bit different for you guys today. We'll be back next week with a special guest. We're just going to confirm that one over the next few days, but we will have a special guest with us next weekend for the next episode, who will share this one with us. And we'll talk about a slightly different thing then as well. So just wanted to touch today on kind of Mental Health Muscle United, a little bit around mental health, a little bit around well-being and what this whole club is about. I hope that's given people a little bit more insight into mental health and the game, and how things look at the moment, and what we plan to do moving forward. But it's been a good one. Thanks, boys, for your time today. And we'll see you all again very soon.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers then. See you later.